On this video, I would like to read uh, 1 Kings 17 concerning the appearance of Elijah, read in Hebrew with an English translation followed by some brief commentary notes. So we begin in verse 1. But prior to beginning, let me just say the prophet Elijah breaks suddenly into the scene in Kings. His ministry is to authenticate Yahweh, the Lord, as God and not Baal or Baal. His name, Yah, is El, that is, Yahweh is God, depicts this. As Yahweh's messenger, he makes predictions affecting Baal's power and does many miracles to show Yahweh's power over Baal or Baal. So we begin in chapter 17, 1 to 7, as we look at how Elijah prophesies to Ahab and then is fed by ravens. I'm beginning to read in verse 1. Vayomer Eliyahu HaTishbi, that is Elijah the Tishbite, Bit Shaver Galad, or Gilad, who was of the settlers of Gilead, El Ahab, said unto Ahab, Hi Adonai Elohei Yisrael, that is, as the Lord God lives, Asher Amati Lefanav, before him I am standing. Im Yeyeh Hashanim Ha'ela, there shall not be dew, or these years, there shall not be in these years, tal umatar, dew or rain. Ki im lefi devari, but according to my mouth or my word. So as we think about that particular verse, the prophet is introduced as abruptly as Melchizedek, his birth in the book of Genesis, his birth, parents, and call to the prophetic office all being unrecorded. The Hebrew translated from Tishbe instead of from the settlers of Gilead has been much analyzed and discussed by scholars. But this rendering seems most probable, though unlocated. Tishbe was probably on the Wadi Yabis in northeast Gilead, east of Jabes Gilead. So Elijah said to Ahab, here begins the classic confrontation between Elijah the prophet and Ahab the king. The complete story will occupy chapters 17 to 22. Chapters 17 to 19 form one uninterrupted narrative. The reader will also discover that 1 Kings 17, 1 to 11 and 2 Kings 10, 31 deals entirely, with brief exceptions where the accession of a new king in Judah had to be mentioned, with events in the north, that is, in Israel, and with three great characters, Elijah, Ahab, and Elisha, plus another who brought the house of Omri to a bloody end, and that is Jehu. The prophet appears to have been warning Ahab how fatal to the people of Israel and to himself would be the reckless course he was pursuing of permitting the introduction and promotion by Jezebel of the Phoenician Baal Melkart cult. Melkart being the particularly Phoenician adaptation of the Canaanite god Baal. Elijah, therefore, is commissioned to defend and demonstrate the absolute superiority of the Lord, or Yahweh, over Baal. He begins with a characteristic way of introduction used throughout the narrative, as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives. He then goes on to show his power as the living God. There won't be any dew or rain for several years. This prediction, prefaced by the phrase, as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, is directed against Baal. As the god of fertility, Baal is to send the rain. For example, from his house, the autumn rains were to fall, as one text reads, and this is a quote from C.H. Gordon, Ugaritic Handbook 51, 7, 14, and following. Let a window be open in the house, a shutter in the midst of the palace, and the clouds shall be open with rain. Speaking of Baal and what he would cause to happen. Baal, or Baal, however, will be thwarted by the living God, and no rain will appear according to the words of the prophet. Josephus cites Menander concerning a drought during the rule of Baal, that is Jezebel's father, and we see this in Josephus' Antiquities 8:13 and 2. Elijah continued, until the word, or literally, according to my word. Elijah is not speaking out of spite, of vengeance, or whim, but as a spokesman for the Lord. The impending calamity is a punishment intended for the spiritual revival of Israel from Baalism. Drought had already been a threatened punishment for national idolatry. We see this in Deuteronomy 11, 16 and 17, and 28:23. Loss of rainfall in an agricultural society in a land which never had more than enough in any region, not quite enough in others, but almost none in others, caused economic disaster. And so we now continue in the next verse or two. And so I read the next verse, verse 2. Vayehi Devar Adonai Elav Lemor. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, verse 3, Lake Mezeh Ufanita Lecha Kedema, that is, Get you from here and turn yourself to the east. Venistarta benahal kerit, and hide yourself in the brook Cherith, Asher al Panei Yarden, which is before the Jordan. So he's called here to go to the brook Cherith and to hide himself, which is before the Jordan. Ahab, perhaps at first, took lightly Elijah's prediction as simply the emotional outpouring of a frustrated prophet. But the Lord foresaw that when Ahab found the drought an actuality that was continuing and increasing in severity, he would seek out Elijah either to punish him or browbeat him into ending it. So the Lord removed Elijah from the reach of Ahab by directing him to hide beside the brook Cherith, the precise location of which is unknown, but was a tributary stream in Gilead, east, it seems, of the Jordan River, in whose hillsides there were many caves to provide shelter. There God would give him drink from the brook and would miraculously direct ravens to feed him. The tradition that the Wadi Kelt near Jericho was the brook Cherith is medieval in origin, and the text clearly requires it to be in Gilead. So then we continue in the next verses, and I'm reading verse 4. V'haya mehanachal tishteh, and it shall be from the brook, it shall be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded ravens, v'eta oravim siviti lechal kelcha sham, and I have commanded ravens to feed you there. So, verse 5, Vayelek vaya'as kidbar Adonai. So he went, and he did, according to the word of the Lord. Vayelek vayeshev benahal kerit. And he went and dwelt by the brook Cherith, Asher al Panei Yarden, that is before the Jordan. Now we have the ravens coming. V'ha'oravim mevi'im lo, and the ravens brought to him lechem uvasar baboker, bread and flesh in the morning, the lechem uvasar ba'erev, and bread and flesh in the evening, umin hanachal yeshteh, and from the brook he drank. So they brought him, that is, the ravens were feeding him and taking care of him. The idea of ravens bringing bread is interesting. The idea of such unclean scavenger-type birds being employed to feed the prophet has appeared to many so strange that they have suggested that we correct the Hebrew here, oravim, which in English has consistently been translated ravens, to read aravim, a word found in 2 Chronicles 21:16 and Nehemiah 4:7, where it is translated Arabian, and in Ezekiel 27:27, where it is translated merchants, the Arabians being great merchants. But the common rendering, Oravim, ravens, is in our opinion preferable to such conjectures. And since Elijah was miraculously fed by ravens, it is idle to inquire where they found the bread and the meat, for God would direct them. And so at this point, we're seeing a miracle of the Lord to direct them as to where they could find the bread and the meat which was given to Elijah. I'm just going to stop there, sort of taking my time working through the Hebrew. And so from this point on, we'll move on. The section consisting of chapter 7, or 17, I should say, to 2 Kings 10 is full of stories of miraculous happenings in the lives of Elijah and Elisha, and attempts to rationalize them into human explanations, I believe, missed the mark. God produced miracles in the Hebrew Bible at critical points when it was necessary to confirm his authority to his people. Some examples would be Exodus 3 to 12, 1 Kings 17 to 2 Kings 10, and Daniel chapter 3, verse 6. So we're seeing God performing miracles throughout the Hebrew scriptures to confirm the messenger and confirm who he is. And so I'm going to stop here and I'll try to pick it up next time and continue reading the Hebrew text with an English translation and some brief comments.